Ozzy's observations on the Eagles' win over the Giants at Ozzy_football on Twitter. Protect your head. Defend your head. And let me tell you, a lot of great observations in that game yesterday that has this team playing for something Monday night. If they lose this game, they're not playing for anything Monday night. You're playing out the string.
No, we're talking about the draft.
We're talking about Hextall getting fired.
Yeah.
Hextall fired. Breaking news earlier this afternoon. Jimmy Butler's 3. We might have been talking about that.
Jimmy Buckets.
That's awesome. What a great...
The Sixers have the third best record in the NBA right now. Isn't that right? Third best record? Not just in the Eastern Conference, I think in the NBA.
You might be right about that.
They're
I know
right?
The East has been better than the West so far this year. Golden State's been a little bit in
they're also
the mess.
playing a little easier schedule, but I mean, yeah.
Who?
The East. There's only 2 or 3 good teams in the East compared to the West.
I don't know about that. I think the East is a little deeper this year.
We'll see. I don't know about that.
Who's the second? Memphis is right now the third best team in the West.
Yeah, call me at the end of the year.
Portland, Memphis.
You got Portland. I think the Lakers have surged lately. So you got the Lakers. I still think Golden State's very good. I think San Antonio will get their act together a little bit. It is weird to see the Clippers at 13-6. I don't know how long that's going to last. I think Denver is a good team. What's Utah? They're really struggling.
They're struggling, yeah.
See, that's why I said
been pretty good.
That's why I say call me at the end of the year.
Think about this. Boston is 500.
How about Sacramento? Sacramento is proving my point.
Thankfully.
By the way, I've been saying for a long time, over a year now, that the pick that the Kings are going to wind up giving to the Celtics is not as bad as people are going to.
Thankfully.
I've been saying that for a while. They've been stockpiling young, good players. It had to pay off.
Thankfully.
Yeah.
All right, let's bring in Billy Osborne here, get his observations on the Eagle victory over the New York Giants. They get to 5-6, and a couple of observations right off the start, Oz. The play calling. I thought Peterson in the first half of that game did a terrible job of calling with play calling. I thought it was much better in the second half.
Well, first off, I agree with you 100%. And before I jump into that, let me just say I hear what Jeff and you guys are saying. First off, that Jimmy Butler shot, that step back 3 was unbelievable. And who would have thought the East with Toronto, with Milwaukee, with the Sixers, with the Celtics, and also Indiana at any time or any night can actually beat a team. They got 4 or 5 teams in the East. Who would have thought that? And you talk about Boston at 500. They beat Toronto and the Sixers and Milwaukee all at their place, all on the road. So they played up to their competition and down to their competition. So you're right. It's a crazy to think that the power is kind of balanced now, and LeBron went from the East to the West. So there's my take on the
And
NBA.
nobody would have hit that shot before Jimmy was here. There was just nobody on the team that was going to take or hit that shot.
Nope. And
That's
J.J. Redick, by the way,
right.
had the open 3 again the other night and missed it. He misses that shot every time.
But hold on. But let's just say this: when they were down 8 and he got back in, did you see that screen he came off of? I think it was the tie or maybe to go up 1. I mean, it was absolutely money to get them in that position at the end of the game. I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's a streaky shooter, just like all great shooters, but they need him. I wasn't, as Jeff will tell you, I was not a big fan of his last year. I just didn't think he was a good team player. But I see a little shift in there. It seems like he's playing better, and the Sixers need him, that's for sure.
All right, so let's look at Peterson and the play calling here because, a lot of people looking at the fact that they ran the ball, but I thought he was a little bit more creative in general in the second half.
I agree. It was crazy. And we talked about this last week, Mike, that, I know people say it's a passing league. And listen, I'm a quarterback at heart. I'm a wide receiver at heart. I'm all for throwing the football. But you also need to have some type of balance, and especially with a banged-up offensive line and, some things that are going in place, you need to have some type of semblance to get those receivers open and give Carson a shot. So it was weird to see that first half unfold, and especially, if you saw that one play where I think it was 3rd and short, and they decided to run it, and the Giants were out there literally pointing to their team, saying, they're running the ball here, and when they ran it, they literally – 3 guys were in the backfield, and Carson Wentz, I think, lost 2 yards, and they had to punt the football. And then all of a sudden in the second half, I mean, they came out, they were throwing the ball, they ran the ball, they actually ran the ball. Jeff and I talked about this earlier. They actually ran the ball like 4 times in a row in one series. I don't think that's ever happened in the last year or two. And it just seemed like he started getting more confidence, and maybe they did something at halftime. But from that, Mike, you saw how the whole offense seemed to settle in. Carson had a lot more confidence. The receivers were getting open, and the offensive line started playing, I thought, a lot more effectively in the second half, especially pass blocking, when there was absolute no doubt that the Eagles were passing the football.
Yeah, and then, they got the run game going behind this kid Adams, and, I thought they did a good job getting him in there, but that was really the key, was that they stuck with it. He had that 52-yard run early, Oz, and they never went back to the kid until really, I don't remember him running the ball again until later on in the game.
I agree with you, and we talked about this last week, and I've been talking about it for 8 or 9 weeks. They have to be patient. They're not always going to have these big running, statistically, running the football. But just like we saw a couple weeks ago when they played the Cowboys, they had, one of the best running backs in the whole league bottled up in the first half, but the Cowboys stayed with it. And next, they blew the game open in the second half behind Elliott's running the football. So, that's, I think, the key for this Eagles. And Doug talked about it, and Carson. I remember they asked him last night in a press conference. They said, what was the difference? What do you see with your offense? And he said, the best friend of a quarterback is a running game. And we saw last night what can happen when you not only run the ball, but you run with a purpose. That's always been my, I guess you could say, I'm not complaining. I'm just my observation. When you run the football, especially on first down, and it's just the zone run with no motion, no pulling of anybody, just straight up saying, everybody get a hat on a hat. It just, to me, was ineffective. It's like they were happy with getting 3 yards, and consequently, their offense struggled. Last night, for whatever reason, something happened at halftime. Things started happening, and their offense settled in and played a really good second half.
Ozzie, what have you taken away from Josh Adams? Because one thing that he impressed upon me yesterday is that I'm really impressed with his patience as a runner for a guy who's 230 pounds. Usually those guys hit the hole hard. They're trying to get downhill quickly. He really lets the blockers kind of set up with his patient style, which I think is pretty good for an undrafted rookie.
I agree with you. And people forget the fact that he has, he's got a pretty good, career. If you look at him, he played at Notre Dame, was extremely effective. I think didn't even finish in the Heisman Trophy ballot at one point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, he's got a lot of experience, and I think there was some knock about his off the field. I think that's potentially maybe have led to. I mean, when would you ever heard of a Notre Dame player in the Heisman Trophy voting and contention not getting drafted? I mean, with that PR machine, they seem to always have guys being drafted, especially if they're in the Heisman Trophy talk. So the Eagles obviously got a guy who is a young guy who was undrafted, but he's got a ton of experience, and you can see him gaining confidence in the last couple games. And I love the way, as you pointed out, sometimes when the guys get the football, they're so excited and they're so exuberant. They just run to the hole, and that's before everything is set up. That's before the blocking get in. That's before anything can happen. And I think that, basically with the way he ran yesterday, to me, showed that he's got confidence. And it gave the offense more confidence, but also gave Doug Peterson more confidence because then he got him more touches. So I think the fact that he, was patient, let the plays unfold, and didn't get discouraged when he only got 1 or 2 yards, set him up for some good success later in that second half.
And I think that's what we've talked about a lot all year when it was Wendell Smallwood as lead carrier or Corey Clement earlier in the year, is that Doug just did not have the confidence in any of his individual running backs to feature it more in his attack. And now going forward, I still wonder if Doug can accept the fact that he needs to be a different kind of coach this year with this offense to get the most out of him. And he needs to lean on the run like he did yesterday, not just to get the offense stabilized, not just against bad teams like the Giants, but this is probably how he has to operate going forward, and just see if that's good enough to win more games and see what happens before he can really just open it up again.
Well, let's hope so for if you're an Eagle fan, because that's going to be the medicine for them to have any success in the last 4 games. With that banged up defense, especially that secondary, they're going to need to control the clock, control the ball, run the ball to keep that other team's offense off the field and give them as few chances as possible to score. So my concern about Doug is what happens when they get behind early and they're down 10 points or they're down, 2 touchdowns or whatever it might be, because a lot of times you get antsy and you just want to throw. And that's going to be the key. He's a young head coach now he's got he's calling all the plays. So will he take this, victory and the way that they won and apply it in next week's game, especially if they start getting bottled up or get behind early on? Because to me, if he does that and he does stay with the run, I think the offense is going to be successful. They have enough parts, and their offensive line is not really that banged up. A lot of teams are banged up along the front.
Well, and Ozzie,
to be seen.
The RPO, when they ran the ball, it makes that RPO believable. And that opened some things up for Alshon Jeffrey. You saw, they were able to get that play to Aguilar. It opened some things up for these receivers because it forced the secondary of the Giants to pause a second because they thought you might actually hand the ball to this kid.
You're exactly right. It was amazing to see how those linebackers bid up and how the defensive backs were spying in the backfield and how the defensive line really had to, have their run gaps. They had to stay in them. They couldn't just tee off on their rush and get after Carson. So, agreed. That was such a big part of that second half. Now, saying that, Mike and Jeff, I got to tell you, I was a little bit surprised with that 4th down call. Now, I thought it was tremendous. I haven't seen the 2 shallow crisscrosses and the deep dig or the deep skinny post yet. And I think Jeff said that they did it a couple times last year to success with that middle read. I haven't seen it. That was a tremendous call. But what I was surprised on, and I'd like to get your guys' thoughts, is that on 4th and short, after having the success running, he lines up in shotgun. And he does motion the running back in, but he just flares him out. I was surprised because at that point, everybody on the defense is probably thinking, watch the run, get upfield, don't get blocked, make sure you get low, stay in your gaps. And all of a sudden, he comes out and shotgun. The defense must have been, thank goodness we don't have to worry about the run. Let's just worry about drop zone. I was completely shocked that he did not get under center or at least do something for the defense to hold him. I thought for sure it was going to be play action, or they were going to run the power off tackle, or if he did go play action, he would roll Carson out and give him a run pass option with a little dump to the fullback, or having Wentz check block and then check and release to the flat, something like that. So I don't know about you guys, but I was shocked that he went like that. So I guess it just goes to show you he likes the running game and he says the right things, but when push comes to shove, he still went back to the pass.
Yeah, I think Doug is caught between a guy who really loves to pass and has a great quarterback, but also understands that his offense just hasn't been right all year, has some limitations, and he needs to be more reliant on a balanced ground attack. And there are times, to your point, Ozzie, where he completely commits to the run, and in this game, probably the first time ever that he's done it down 16 points, but also times where after you get a few good runs, you feel like he can open it back up. And maybe that 4th down call to Aguilar was an example of when he felt like he had a great play call against a look that the Giants were expecting a run. So I can see that. The big challenge and test, I think, going forward when you play Washington on Monday night is that they have an excellent run defense. They got 2 Alabama studs in the middle of their defense and a really good Pro Bowl linebacker in Ryan Kerrigan. I feel like the temptation will be there for Doug to get away from the run if it's not going well early, and I feel like that might be a mistake.
I would agree. That's why when you said that to me, I'm still not sold. I mean, I think he's seeing he sees the right things, or he sees it. He says the right things, but it's going to be when those instances where you got to make a play call and you got to make it quick, and it's not after a timeout. What will you call? And I think right now, I mean, he has shown his comfortability is to throw the football, which again, I don't necessarily have a problem. And obviously, even if I have a problem, who cares? But my observation is this: don't give the defense an advantage. I think in anything, when you're an offensive coordinator, and this is the one thing that people talk about, passing, running, doesn't matter. The key of play calling is to call a play that the other team is not ready for. So if you want to have success in the National Football League, you need to be multifaceted, multidimensional. That means shifting, motion to get a good feel for what the defense is doing. Then you want to have a great play called against that defense. And part of that, to me, is keeping all options open, keeping your playbook completely open. And when you go shotgun or go empty set in a situation where it's short yardage, I think the defense breathes a sigh of relief. They're like, okay, that's one part of the game we don't have to worry about. And it signals to the defensive line, just get upfield and get to the quarterback as fast as possible. And I think until the Eagles understand that and consistently attack it, I think you're going to see some inconsistencies, and that's my concern from them from an offensive standpoint going forward.
You also expressed a concern or an observation, I guess, about Golden Tate when we were talking earlier today. I thought it was really interesting. Go ahead and articulate it.
Well, when I'm watching him on film and watching him on tape, one of his great, I guess you can say, one of the ways that he is so successful is he catches that ball in space. He makes people miss. He's fearless. And he runs, you always hear about his run after catch. And I think a lot of that is, yes, his fearlessness, his toughness, but a lot of it is his quickness in space, his ability to jump in and out of cuts when people are there and to run through arm tackles and run to space in daylight.
Mm-hmm.
On grass, it's a lot more difficult to run after a catch and make those quick cuts in and out of your breaks and to make people miss. And I say that two things. Number one, I watch it on film. And number two, I'm playing from my own experience. I wasn't a burner. Nobody would say that. And I relied on different things to get open. But I felt so much faster and I felt a lot quicker when I laced up my running shoes or my turf shoes as opposed to my grass shoes. And I just did not feel like the same receiver in space. And when I look at Golden Tate, I see a lot of that now with grass when he's doing his kickoff or his punt returns and he's catching those balls in space. I don't see that escapability or that running after catch greatness that we were so used to seeing when he played for Detroit and he played up in Seattle.
Yeah. It seems like every time he catches the ball, Ozzie, I mean, he's going almost right down. I mean,
they are on him immediately.
Yeah, he seems frustrated. Even in punt returns, he seems unsure of himself. It just seems like he is not comfortable in his role right now.
That's a great observation. I saw the same thing, and I kept thinking, is it him? Is it the offense? Where is he at? And I'm thinking, is he not getting – in other words, when he gets caught, he gets the ball and he gets tackled right away. So the question is it the routes? Is he not getting open? Is he not creating enough space? Now, he's played 3 games. Are they all been at home or 2 have been at home? For the Eagles, he played 2 games at home. And
Cowboys game. No, what was the game before
was on the road?
Yeah, New Orleans, Dallas, and then this past game against the Giants.
So he played at the Saints on the road in the turf. That's a great indication. I would be curious to see if somebody asked him. I don't think he's ever going to say I feel different on grass but turf, but I'd be curious to find out what his stats look like when he plays on turf and when he plays on grass.
Yeah. So we can dig that up and talk about it
later. Yeah, I think that's on Football Reference. Yeah. Let me ask you about Schwartz and what he was able to do. I mean, early it looked like, man, this defense is just getting outmanned again. But it looked like while the Giants' halftime adjustments were head-scratching, I think Schwartz's halftime adjustments were maybe the key to victory.
I think that you are right, and I even mentioned it on my tweet. I said to you guys, Jim Schwartz's change and his adjustments pre-game and at halftime, I give him a lot of credit. As we've always talked about, he's this, it's becoming like the talk of the National Football League, too. It's a copycat league. You see many teams running that real, free safety way down the middle of the field, and he just breaks on the football and tries to keep everything in front of him. Well, that's what he likes to do, especially behind that wide 9. But yesterday, I think we saw him say, you know what, my defense is banged up, especially my secondary. Yes, I will bring some blitzes and I will play some man, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to give those guys help over top. And he did that. And I think in a lot of ways it frustrated the Giants because we saw them have to check down, continually check down. And then Eli got a little greedy. And that, I think, has to do with the fact is if you're, just face it, if you're in life and you have this you have this gift and you have this talent, and you can't use it. And then you finally get a chance. You're like, I'm just going to use it anyway. I'm just going to shoot the gun or whatever it might be. Well, Eli tried to force a ball in, to one of his great receivers out there, and he threw into triple coverage. And he was not open, but guess who was open? The check down was wide open to Barkley, and he didn't throw it to him. And because of that, the Eagles kept him out of the end zone or a field goal, and that ultimately led to them winning the football game. So I give a lot of that to the coach on the defensive side of the ball. He played with, as Chichi Rodriguez would say, play with the game, or when you come to the course, whatever your game is that day, you got to play it, or play with the cards that are dealt. Well, he played with the cards that were dealt.
Well, Oz, and you tweeted about this at Ozzy_football, that Peterson's team never quit. If you were on social media at halftime, people were accusing him of quitting. They were saying this play here was the one they quit on. This team quit. They mailed it in. Season's over. And people called them out for quitting last week against the Saints. I don't know that they quit last week. I think they were just completely outmanned, and it was one of those weeks. You've probably been a part of a game like that where the snowball just starts going and you can't stop it. This week, people were saying they quit, yet they come back and win the game.
Yes, and that first half, and quite frankly, I don't know about you guys, but this is still the same team that was down at halftime and was getting spanked at halftime. I mean, do you realize that the New York Giants set their own individual record at halftime, set a record for the series at halftime between the Giants and the Eagles, and were on pace to beat what the Saints had done the week before against the Eagles in their record-setting game? And at halftime, things changed. Now, I like to believe that all of a sudden Coach came up with this unbelievable talk at halftime, and they had these players just had an epiphany. But I got to tell you, looking at this tape time and time again, I'm bewildered at what the Giants did. I think it had more to do with what the Giants did at halftime and less to do with what the Eagles did defensively at halftime. Now, did they not quit? Yes. Did they play hard? Absolutely. Did they gain momentum? Did they gain confidence as the game went on? They sure did. But I think a lot of that had to do with what the Giants did. For the life of me, I can't imagine what was said at halftime to go in there and say, you know what, this guy at running back has been doing this, this, and this, and that. We are moving the ball. Let's change it. I mean, what happened? That's what my question is. And I'm sure you guys have saw the same thing that I did.
Oh, he said what? What did they say? They were trying to keep them fresh. They wanted to pick their spots with them. I mean, just, I don't know.
All you need to know is 346 first-half yards and 3 third-quarter yards.
Billy Osborne at Ozzy_football. Listen to his Inside the Birds podcast with Jeff Mosher and Adam Kaplan. Defend Your Head. Check that out on Twitter at Defend Your Head. And, of course, Ozzy's observations every week here on the Boardwalk Honda Hotline. Eagles win over the Giants. And next week we'll be previewing the Eagles and the Redskins. Looking forward to it, Oz. Thanks, man.
You guys welcome. Take care. Have a good week.